Why, hello there, old sports, and well, you've seemed to have caught me at a pretty bad time, and I already made this joke in the FNAF video, so I'm not doing it again. Parrying has always been one of my favorite mechanics in video games, with my favorite standout example being Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Now, I'm sure if you've clicked on this video, and if you've just played Silksong in general, you know that there is a parry skill in Silksong as one of the 6 Silk skills. And while the cross-stitch parry skill doesn't do very much damage, that doesn't make it the worst Silk skill. That title belongs to Sharp Dart. What this cross-stitch doesn't have in damage, it makes up for in speed, and by that I mean like you can press the button and it instantly comes out, and 2, it gives you a lot of invincibility frames. Welcome back, Descending Dark. So the question I aim to answer today is, can you beat Hollow Knight Silksong with only cross-stitch? The answer is no. Thank you for what? No. Technically you can't because you don't have enough silk to actually use the skill. So what I did for this run is I gave myself 3 silk hearts off the get-go, as well as the Weave Light tool. Now the Weave Light tool acts as basically a mini silk heart in a sense. It gives you another ring of silk in your meter, and then it also, I think it speeds up the regeneration of silk, but I could be wrong there. Now this is simultaneously a boon because it makes the challenge possible, but it's also slightly a drawback because that means we can't use a different blue tool. We only have for the sake of this run, we technically only have 1 blue tool slot. Now you might think this challenge would be too easy at first, but keep in mind that the only way we can get soul is through our silk hearts, and that only gives us a maximum of 4 silk, which, if you know basic numbers, 4 is less than 9, and 9 is how much silk you need to bind, aka heal. So, that basically means we're not able to heal in battle outside of some very specific circumstances, but I'll get into that later. Add on to that the fact that the only way we can actually do damage is by throwing ourselves into attacks, and not being able to heal becomes a much bigger problem. So, yeah. Anyway, let's start the run. Now for most of this run, I'm going to kind of skim over the quote-unquote walking sections of the game, unless there's actually something that stands out, because I feel like saying that, oh, I ran by enemies for the 6th time, is going to pad out the video and just kind of make it boring and long for the sake of being long, and I don't really want to do that. So just assume if I skipped over something, I just ran by the enemies trying to avoid them as much as physically possible, okay? Okay. Our first actual obstacle that we can't just run past in the game is obviously the Moss Mother. And Moss Mother is a pretty good warm-up round, I guess, to test out our skill and just try to hone our skills with using the parry. Because she moves slow enough, thankfully, to where you can, as long as you keep in mind how long the parry is active, you can kind of just react, and you don't have to predict when she's going to attack. You can just react and just press the button as she gets close to you. Again, just try to keep in mind how long the parry is actually active for. It's also good that Moss Mother has no means of doing double damage to us, which means we can't afford to make plenty of mistakes as we get used to how the parry works as our only form of offense. I mean, it would suck if we had to deal with a boss that mostly did double damage while only having 5 health. That would be terrible! In all seriousness, Moss Mother does actually introduce something important, and that is having to juggle multiple enemies. Because she can spawn the little moss babies in, and you have to keep track of those and Moss Mother at the same time, and you have to parry accordingly. You have to make sure the parry hits the boss, or you have to focus on clearing out the enemies. You just need to keep all that stuff in mind, and that can kind of complicate things and cause you to slip up because you're trying to think about too much at once. Anyways, she eventually goes down, and we're let free into the rest of Farloom. After kind of exploring around a bit, trying to gather rosaries, shell shards, all that good stuff, I get to the Bell Beast, and I decide to bend the rules a little bit, and by that I mean I pick up the Silk Spear skill, and I use it to free the Bell Beast, and then I let myself die, so then I can respawn at the bench, re-equip cross-stitch, and then go actually fight the Bell Beast, because my rule I set in my head when I started was I was only allowed to damage enemies, with a minor exception later, with cross-stitch, so I figured actually using a different skill just to free Bell Beast when it does no damage would be fine, but if you feel like that's bending the rules, I completely understand that. Anyways, for the Bell Beast fight herself, You actually just need to be careful and just try to make sure you have enough invincibility frames after you finish the parry to jump out of her hitbox before your invincibility runs out and you take damage, because that happens if you're not careful. So keep that in mind, I guess. This didn't really matter much in this specific fight, but also keep in mind that even if it isn't going to damage the boss, sometimes parrying off a projectile can give you invincibility frames when else you would have gotten hit, and it's better to have to waste like 4 seconds trying to wait for another parry than to take damage, so just keep that in mind. Anyways, after 2 or 3 more tries, the Bell Beast goes down, and we unlock both fast travel and another Silk Heart, which I didn't try to remove because I didn't know how to do that without messing up the game. So technically we have 5 rings of silk now, but again, that doesn't really change much because we can't heal, so yeah. After grabbing Dash, I decide to try to do the little arena that gives you access to Forge Daughter, and I don't know why I did this because she sells nothing useful for us, but I did it, or I tried to at least, and this is where I found out a useful strategy. If you jump at an enemy and cross-stitch right before you're about to hit them and take contact damage, the momentum will carry you into their hitbox for just a split second, and you can basically parry on command, or not on command, but you can throw yourself into the enemies, and even if they aren't attacking, you have enough, like, you have a split second, and it's kind of hard to pull off, but you can parry without actually them having to attack you. So that becomes a very useful strategy later, but for now it's just minor, it's just kind of minor helpful, but I don't know. I just thought I should bring that up now because it will become much more important later. After defeating that arena, I unlock the bench and then go on to fight Lace. And Lace is actually really fun in this challenge, and I feel like her moveset actually works very well for parry only. There's no dumb mobs, there's no dumb arena gimmicks, it's just a nice one-on-one. And I feel like since her fight in the cradle, I feel like the parry skill works very well there. It works equally well as here because she's not doing double damage, and it's basically the same moveset beyond that. So, it just works well, what else do I say? Also, very luckily for me, I ended up staggering her and making her fall into the lava, which took a good chunk out of her health bar, and then from there the fight was pretty much over after that. And while I'm on this point, I figure I should talk about staggers a bit, because while cross-stitch does hit 4 times, it doesn't count as 4 hits towards the stagger. You need to use cross-stitch a lot more to actually trigger a stagger in the enemy, but you can stagger them nonetheless. So just keep in mind it will take a while to actually stagger the boss, and sometimes you won't even get a stagger off at all, but it's just something that happens occasionally. You'll only be like, oh, this is a good opportunity to just stand there and recover silk. So, yeah. But as I said earlier, once Lace fell in the lava, the fight was pretty much over, and I defeated her with the next cross-stitch. So with that, we move on to the Far Fields. After entering the Far Fields, I get some quests done back in Bone Bottom before getting the Drifter's Cloak, and then from there, instead of fighting the 4th chorus, I decide that I just am gonna do the skip. And the way you do that skip is you have to like jump off the left side of the arena off screen, then do like a combination of like drifting and dashing, and then you have to bind, and then you have to hit the edge of the bridge and then grab onto it. It's kind of hard to explain without visuals, and for some reason I didn't record that portion because I was like, oh, this isn't a boss fight, I don't need to record this because my hard drive was getting full of space. It's a whole thing. Anyways, after that I go through Greymoor and then fight the Moorwing. And the thing about Moorwing is this was like the first quote-unquote endurance fight I had to do in the run, because if the whole cross-stitch hits, it does about 3 times your basic nail damage. So technically only hitting the enemy 3 times over like 5 or 6 seconds it takes to regen the silk, that drags this fight out a lot longer than it needs to take. Or I mean, technically I'm doing it optimally in this case, but you get what I mean. If I was playing normally, this would be taking a lot longer than it needed to. And this becomes a problem with all the bosses up to Widow, and including Widow herself, because until we have a nail upgrade, our damage starts to tank here because we are not attacking very often. And like I said, cross-stitch is like one of the least damaging skills, so it's kind of just a whole disaster of, it's just a mix of a bunch of things that add up to a disaster. Thankfully, since Moorwing got nerfed, I managed to do this on my first try because the little like wing blades or claw blade things that shoots at you only do 1 damage now instead of 2. And while I felt like the nerfs to Moorwing and Sister Splinter weren't warranted when the game first came out, I am very happy they exist for the sake of challenge runs. Moving on. And then, After exploring Shellwood for a bit, I decided that I wasn't allowed to skip Sister Splinter because that would involve me pogoing off an enemy, and since it isn't a mandatory platforming thing, I decided that was not allowed, so I would have to fight Sister Splinter. I then proceeded to fail to kill Sister Splinter for 4 hours straight. I'm not kidding. Sister Splinter is brutal, and for some reason I forgot that there was a 4th mask shard that you could get before getting Wall Cling. So I only had 5 masks for this whole fight. Technically I could have had 6, but like I said, I forgot. So this was brutal. You can only take 3 hits, and technically if I had 6 masks I could only take 3 hits anyway because I can't really heal. So that's a whole thing, but I'm not gonna worry about that. This fight is so brutal, and Sister Splinter is pretty tanky. The only Act 1 boss that takes like longer than her is Widow, because again, we can't upgrade our nail until we kill Widow, and we can't kill Widow until we kill Sister Splinter. So, this whole thing is just horrible. Now at first, the fight doesn't seem very bad. Sister Splinter will use her triple slam attack, and you just need to wait until she swings, and then you can parry. Easy peasy. And then she yells. And then she starts to summon the little flying stick bugs. And then she starts calling down the spikes from the ceiling. And that's where everything falls apart. Now I decided I wasn't allowed to destroy the spikes with my nail, so I had to wait until I could parry to do so. And the thing about that is I have to be close to the vines to destroy them with the parry. So that means I had to willingly box myself in to avoid getting boxed in further later. I'm sure you can see why that's a problem. And then as the fight goes on, what she'll start to do is she'll start to summon a stick bug, then throw down some vines, and then swing. So you have to deal with the vines and the stick bug for a while before she starts to do the swing attack. So you're going to get hit by the bugs a lot, and by a lot I mean like over all your attempts. Again, I don't know why I'm framing this as a tutorial, no one's going to do this, but it's brutal, and it's so annoying because the stick bugs will like tornado swirl in the most random of directions sometimes, and it feels so inconsistent, so you start tricking yourself into thinking that you need to like predict where they're gonna go, but then they decide to move normally for once, and then they hit you, and then they hit you into the vines, which does double damage, or not double damage, but you end up taking 2 hits of damage when you should have only taken 1, and technically you shouldn't even have taken 1 anyways because the bugs are so inconsistent. It's just very annoying and very tedious, and you just need to be very patient, and it's really hard to do that when you feel like you're in imminent danger. Just as Sister Splinter was the hardest fight in this whole run, this was the hardest part of the run to script. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about one piece of tech, I guess, that I'm going to talk about before moving on to Widow. When you die in Silksong, you leave behind a cocoon roughly where you died. And when you break this cocoon, you not only get all your rosaries back, but you get 1 bind worth of silk. Now this means you can basically store 1 bind worth of silk in the arena. So, if you end up dying, you can use that cocoon next time to get 1 heal. And because it sets your notch to 9 silk, so that means you always have 1 heal. But the problem with this is, if your parry hits the cocoon, it will break it. So, you can't always use it when you want to. Sometimes you'll break it when you don't mean to, and that can be problematic. And at that point, if you're missing any health and you break it, might as well just heal there to try to get the most out of it, because you're not going to be able to heal again in the fight. Now for Sister Splinter, the arena is wide enough to where you can try to just camp one side of the arena, and by that I mean the opposite side of the arena where the cocoon is, and then from there, you can just use the cocoon when you need to, and that basically increases your health from 5 to 8, and that is incredibly helpful, and it was probably the only reason I managed to do this, or at least as quickly as I did, and by quickly I mean it took me 4 hours, but it could have taken me longer, I guess, and that sounds horrible to think about, so I'm not going to do that. Anyways, I managed to kill Sister Splinter, we get Wall Cling, and then from there, let's go fight Widow. Widow herself isn't that difficult, but I might have been desensitized by, fighting Sister Splinter for 4 hours, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I realized that it was better to be safe than sorry in this fight, so it's good to parry even if the bells might not hit you, because if they would have hit you, then hey, parry, you didn't take damage. So that's good. And then Basically, the safest opportunity to get damage in on Widow is when she does her, like, claw attack, not when she does any of the bell-related attacks, so just look out for the claw attack and try to parry that if you want. Again, I don't know why I'm phrasing this as a tutorial. Now, her desperation phase is actually probably the most complicated part of this fight, because I died a few times here when I probably didn't need to, and that's because to actually end the fight with Widow, you need to strike her once with the nail once her health depletes. And because Hornet has that little cutscene where she, like, binds Widow. So what you need to do is you need to just kind of count out how much health she should have. The wiki tells you how much health she has in that last phase. Do some math, figure out how many parries you need to do, and then after doing that, I did like 1 or 2 more parries more than I thought I needed to, just in case I was counting wrong. And then from there I hit her once, and the fight was over. So I think I handled that as well as I could have, and Widow is down, and from there we can upgrade our nail and actually start doing things. The way I decided to enter the Citadel and Act 2 was by fighting Phantom and going through the mist. And I did this, 1, because I thought it would be faster, and 2, because I felt like we should defeat the parry boss on the parry run, I guess. Or technically, she's not the parry boss, she's just the boss that you get the parry from, but that's besides the point. The mist was actually not that difficult, but then again, I did it on my first try because I was very cautious. I wasn't sure if you could parry the wraiths when they dash at you, or if that counted as like a grab or something, but I didn't want to find out. So I was very careful and never got hit by them. So, or I mean, like, I took contact damage, but I never got hit by that attack where they do, like, they drain your silk and do double damage. So, that was good. I did get turned around a few times, but again, the mist isn't really a combat challenge as much as it is a puzzle. And once you know the secret to the puzzle, it's pretty easy to solve. The hardest part was just finding a way to get to the silk flies without triggering one of the wraiths, like, aggro radius. So, but eventually I did do that, and it was able to reach the bile water organ area works. It has a name that I can't remember, and I for some reason didn't write it into the script. I apologize about that. Yeah, no, but I got to Phantom, and now we can fight Phantom. Phantom was probably my second favorite boss in this whole challenge, right behind her sister, Lace, and specifically the Lace you fight in the cradle as a rematch, but Phantom is a really fun fight. Her attacks are all pretty consistent in their speed, so it's not like you need to memorize different speeds for different attacks, which is a problem some other bosses have. But so you can basically just memorize one attack speed, and then you'll always be hitting your parries on time, and you won't ever over or undershoot it. So that's really satisfying to pull off. I even found out you can parry the attack where she throws down a pillar of steam and then lands, and it only works if that's the last one she's doing, because I know halfway through the fight she does like a chain of them. But if she's doing the singular one, you can parry that, and it's pretty good. But usually what I would suggest is you just want to stay on the ground and wait for her to attack you on the ground. So either the pin throw, not the one in the air, but the one when she's grounded, like I just said, or when she does her, like, triple thrust. So those are really the best opportunities to attack, and the only frustration I got from this fight is probably the having to wait for her to attack on the right time, if that makes sense, or attack the right way, or give me the best optimal attack. On my successful attempt, I was actually kind of nervous that this would be a Widow situation, where I would have to actually strike her once with the nail to end the fight, but thankfully I waited and didn't do that, and I just kept parrying, and eventually the fight ended normally. So I was thankful, because my rule was if I accidentally hit an enemy with the nail for whatever reason, I would just have to quit out and start from my last bench. So if I ever did that in the middle of a boss fight, I would just have to restart. So I'm glad I waited and didn't just go ahead and attack her, because like I said, that would have ended the run, or the attempt of this run. It wouldn't have ended the whole run, it just would have ended that attempt. Anyways, after defeating the Phantom of Farloom by using one last parry, I'm able to enter the Citadel and start Act 2. And specifically, I chose to do this one because you end up on the eastern side of the capital, where the bell station is, or you end up right in the bell station. So it's pretty easy to get everywhere you need to from there. You don't have to wander around for a long time to get where you want to go. It's just more convenient, in my opinion. Upon entering the Citadel, the first thing I rushed towards was the Clockwork Dancers, or the Cogwork Dancers. I keep writing Clockwork in my scripts, I'm very sorry. Anyways, after throwing myself against the Cogwork Dancers for what felt like an eternity, I decided that if I was going to defeat them, I would need better gear. Now, unfortunately for me, most of the upgrades you can get in the Citadel are locked behind the Cogwork Dancers, so I would need to scour everything outside of the Citadel to find as many mask shards as I could, and after searching for a while, I decided to get enough to get me up to 7 masks, and I barely won even though I had 2 more masks, which I guess makes sense considering the Cogwork Dancers do double damage, so technically I only gave myself 1 extra hit, but that was all I needed. The greatest threat the Cogwork Dancers pose to you is luring you into a routine, and by that, I mean that since they start out slow, you'll get used to parrying them on their slow interval, but then once you stagger them and they speed up, you're going to be trying to parry them like they're still in phase 1, and they'll move too fast, and then they'll hit you, and then right as you snap yourself out of that and start learning the new rhythm, now they're in phase 3, and now they're not moving at the same time anymore, they're moving disconnected from each other. So you need to keep track of 2 things on screen, you need to keep track of how much silk you have, and you need to try to keep track of which dancer you're damaging, because that's another thing. The dancers don't share a health pool. You need to damage one of them until it runs out of health. Both of them have the same amount of health, so it's optimal to just focus on one of them. The second hardest part of this battle for this challenge is actually keeping track of the dancers, because when they do their embrace attack, I always lose track of which one I was attacking, and I don't even know if there is a way to keep track of which one you were attacking. So, that's unfortunate. So half the time you have to end up doing most of the damage from both of their health bars anyway, and that wastes a lot of time, and the longer it takes, the more opportunities you have to make a mistake. And the more mistakes you make, the more closer you are to failure. And this fight took 10 minutes on the successful attempt, which is a while. Honestly, probably managing your mental stamina that long is probably the actual hardest part of this battle, but I digress. Anyways, after a long struggle, I do manage to take down one of the dancers, and then the other dancer follows suit. Please ignore the fact that in the footage I almost died. That is not relevant. Moving on. Okay, so, pulling back from the script a moment, I'm starting to realize how long this video is going to be, and everything in my YouTube career has shown me that making a video too long makes people not watch the video. So I'm gonna kind of skip over Trobio because just like a misbehaving child, what he really wants is attention, so we're not gonna give it to him. Trobio was annoying. The only good attack you can parry is this tornado. Moving on. Oh yeah, also I upgraded my needle beforehand. Another reason I'm skipping over him specifically is because I'm afraid that if I speed up the footage too much, all the flashing lights will give someone a seizure. Okay, so, after defeating Trobio, I was able to get the first 2 parts of the melody, leaving only the conductor's melody. So, we have to do the high halls now. And I knew that was not going to go well, so I decided to do some preparation. First, I went to Mount Fey and got the Fey Down Cloak. I also got some more mask shards. From there, I did the delivery missions. I did the courier's delivery as well as the other stuff to get the second to last needle upgrade. Now, I was going to talk about how annoying Ass Jim was, but the thing is, due to my cheating with giving myself 3 silk hearts off the get-go, the maggot debuff doesn't really do anything, because unless you're in the maggot water itself, the maggots can't make you go below the amount of silk you're naturally regenerating, so I was always able to keep parrying him anyways, so the maggot debuff didn't really do anything. Once I had Fey Down Cloak, the second to last nail upgrade, and Claw Line, I decided to go to the Volt Nest and fight the Volt Worm to get the Volt Filament so I could power up my attacks, because the only other way to power up your silk skills is getting the Shaman's Crest, and that would require me to go into Act 3 and defeat Lost Lace eventually. Fuck no, so I'm not doing that. So we're just going to get the Volt Filament thingy, and then we're going to just beat the game like that. Hopefully all that stuff plus the Volt damage will be enough to get us past the High Halls arena, and I'm guessing after that, Lace and Grandmother Silk shouldn't be that difficult. Remember that strategy I mentioned a while ago where I said that if you throw yourself at an enemy and then parry right before you hit them, you'll land the parry, and I said that would come back later? Well, now is later. And that was the only way we were able to defeat the Volt Worm, because I'm 90% sure you cannot parry any of its normal attacks, because obviously it's electricity, that's not really how that works. Thankfully, the Volt Worm is pretty fragile, and honestly, as I figured out that if you stick to the right side of the arena and then just be careful to look out for where the beams of light come from, you can dodge pretty easily, and then also staying on the right is the easiest spot to hit him at. I don't know if you can actually hit him in the other two positions it can spawn at, but just try to stick to the right side of the arena and you'll be safe. Staying in the middle for any reason tends to put you in danger. I don't know, again, no one's going to do this, I don't know why I'm sharing that information, but I guess it makes the video better, or at least I really hope it does, because I don't know. Anyways, eventually the Volt Worm goes down and we claim our prize, and it actually helps us a lot, because it does like plus 25% damage, or it makes our Silk skills do plus 25% damage, and that's always nice. So even after getting 8 masks, all the damage upgrades I could, the only tool that upgrades my damage, and even, well, I guess technically to get the last nail upgrade I needed to get Fade Down Close. You get what I mean. Even after preparing as much as I could, this arena was still brutal. My successful attempt was 7 minutes, and at least with the Clockwork Dancers, you kind of get into a rhythm, and it's easier to be, not mindless, but it's easier to kind of just go with the flow, because there's a rhythm to it. But with this arena, it's constant chaos, constant having to juggle so many things at once. So if anything, it was more stressful than the Cogwork Dancers. I keep messing that up. Why do I keep writing that in the script? Maybe it's auto-correcting, I'm not sure. Anyways, the enemies here, they move independently of each other, and they don't move in a rhythm, so they tend to overlap a lot, and that can cause lots of problems. Thankfully, due to all the upgrades I picked up, if a full parry landed, it could kill like half the enemies in one parry, so that's good, but it was also just really annoying to actually get an attempt where the parries would land all the way, or they would land with multiple enemies at once. So this whole thing was just super stressful, and then the big guys with the mallets come in, and sometimes they'll swing really fast when you're recovering from the parry, and then they hit you, and it's super annoying. It's a whole thing, and the flying enemies are the worst. The little guys with the pins, the guys who throw the bells at you, the guys who throw the cog flies at you, good god, those guys are fucking terrible. But, sorry, I'm swearing too much. Anyways, they are just, it's so much you have to juggle, and I don't even know, because I don't have a strategy for this. My strategy was just throw myself at it until I survived eventually. And I feel kind of dumb here, because usually I would explain my strategy, but I don't have a strategy, so I didn't really have much to write here. So I feel bad. I feel like I did this, like, I barely got through this. This was harder than Sister Splinter, but at least with Sister Splinter, it felt, like, more consistent, I guess. I'm not sure. This whole part of the run was a mess, and I'm glad that I actually just went and got upgrades to make it easier instead of just throwing myself at it for a while, hoping I would break through eventually. Just taking the time to go and grab the upgrades was worth it. Anyways, with that, after we defeat the whole arena, we're able to get the last part of the melody and head up to the cradle. Maybe this is only because I was just so tired of having to deal with the stupidness that was the high halls, but honestly, the fight with Lace in the cradle was probably my favorite part of this whole challenge, and I wish it was not as easy as it was, if anything. I wish it was more of a struggle for me. I beat it on my 3rd attempt. The thing about Cradle Lace is that most of her moves that are different from her initial match only have like after effects, like she'll either do a second dash after her first dash, or she'll leave like balls of energy behind when she does her aerial lunge. But the problem there is that like when you parry, you can kind of just ignore all that because you're in the middle of an animation, and then you have some invincibility frames afterwards. But for what this fight does not have in difficulty, it makes up for in spades with Spectacle. And by that, I just mean you feel amazing fighting Lace like this. Like, it just feels so fun to pull off. And technically, or actually no, you couldn't do this in vanilla because you get the 3rd Silk card after Lace. My bad, I don't know why I wrote that in the script. I should have double checked that. My point here is that you feel cool doing this fight. Add that with the music, the sound effects, the flowers floating in the air, and this is probably one of my favorite fights in the game, even on a normal run. So, getting to fight this in a challenge run is even more amazing. And again, I guess, while I do wish it was harder, the fact that it isn't, like, mind-bustingly difficult makes it more fun, in a sense, because it's not too hard. It's, like, just hard enough to want you wanting more, but not too hard to where you want to pull your hair out. Anyways, as I said, on my 3rd attempt, I managed to best the White Knight and get another Soul Heart, and then open the way to Grandmother Silk, the final boss of the run. Thankfully, Grandmother Silk was actually a pretty fun fight, even if she was very challenging. I would put her right below Phantom on the list of my favorite fights in this challenge run, so I think that's a good thing. I'm not sure. I think doing these challenge runs are starting to desensitize me to how stupid some of these challenges can be. Grandmother Silk has 4 phases, the first one being the first phase, obviously, the second one being when she screams halfway through the first half of the battle, the third phase starts after the fake out, and then the fourth phase starts when she screams one last time. Funnily enough, even though she starts to attack more often the further you go along in the phases, it actually gets a little easier in some ways, because she's actually giving you attacks that you can use because she's attacking more often, so more of those attacks are ones that are helpful. The only attack you should really try to parry here are the horizontal dagger thrusts. The vertical ones aren't ones you should probably be trying to parry because it's kind of inconsistent which direction Hornet will parry, because she'll either, the parry will either kind of reach out to the left or right depending on which way you're facing and which way the projectile or whatever hit you is coming from when the parry activates. So it can be hard to calculate that on the fly when you're having to parry that quickly before the knives hit you. The most dangerous attack Grandmother Silk has by far is her web snare attack that she starts doing halfway through phase 1, and then once she reaches phase 2 she'll do 2 in a row. And the thing is, to my knowledge, you cannot parry this attack, and it does 3 hearts of damage, so that's obviously not good. But it's not that bad either because you can jump through it because it's very well telegraphed, so it's not that hard to avoid it. It's just on those times when you don't avoid it, it's gonna hurt. When Grandmother Silk does her claw swipe attack, where she kind of drags it across the bottom of the arena, you want to make sure to watch out for the knives at the top because they'll do a vertical drop, and you want to make sure to avoid those because it's not really a good time to parry, so you just want to try to avoid them to the best of your ability. When Grandmother Silk reaches phases 3 and 4, she'll start dropping debris from the ceiling, and that can be a problem, but if you wait until she's behind the debris, you can actually still parry her, or parry the knives that come towards you and end up hitting her, because what ends up happening is the parry hitbox reaches out in front of you, hits her, and then once the parry is over, Hornet will kind of drift back from where she started, so you will never hit the debris. The last thing I kind of want to know about her attacks is that when she pulls up the spikes on the floor, I decided that it was okay for me to break them, because it's not really doing damage to them, it's kind of just you have to hit them twice and they go away. But again, if you feel like that's bending the rules because I didn't do that with Sister Splinter, that's completely fine for you to feel that way, and I completely understand why you would feel that way. However, I just decided to do it because I felt like it, and if you want to try this challenge out, be my guest. Thankfully for my final attempt, I managed to keep my nerves in check pretty much the whole fight, and I only got hit once. Part of me wants to go back and just try to do the whole fight without getting hit at all, and I feel like that might be a fun challenge, so if you want to see that, I'll post that as like a bonus video or something. I'm not sure. Either way, eventually the fight is over, and I have proved that yes, you can beat Hollow Knight Silksong with only parries, as long as you give yourself 3 Silk Hearts in the Weave Light at the beginning. But that's I don't know. You have to start the challenge somehow. I'm sorry. Well, with that, the challenge is officially over. I might do Act 3 in the future, but I'm really not sure for now, because I kind of have some other stuff I want to do with Silksong, and some other games I want to play, so I might do that later, I might not, don't hold your breath. I'd also like to just state that this took about 17 hours, at least that's what the in-game timer said at the end of the save file, or 17:52 minutes, so basically 18 hours, I guess. So, if that's a good time, I think it's a good time, but, like, I don't know. I think that's a good, because I know some people have taken a lot longer to beat the game, period, but then again, that was their first time beating the game, and this is not my first time beating the game, and I was technically cheating, because I started out with 3 Silk Hearts and a Weave Light, but, I don't know. I know it was kind of a weird way to start the challenge by already kind of breaking the rules, or, I guess, using outside things to start myself out in a way that makes the challenge possible, but I figured just kind of doing that would make the rest of the video interesting by actually making this a challenge that you can start. But I'm not sure. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please consider commenting, and subscribing, and maybe ringing the notification bell so you know whenever my next video comes out. I would also like to thank my Patreon members, Skill, Issue, and Sven Biscuit for your continued support. It means a lot to me. If you want to join those two people, consider joining YouTube memberships or my Patreon. The choice is up to you. I hope I don't sound like I'm pressuring anyone. Again, I'm so glad that people just like the videos I make at all, and even if this video only gets 1,000 views, I'll be happy, because at least 1,000 people liked it, and that's a lot of people. I don't even think I've ever seen 1,000 people, so I don't know. Or I mean, maybe back when I was in high school, maybe during a assembly that I was with 1,000 people. But again, it's hard to wrap your mind around those numbers. Anyway, I've been yapping long enough. Please comment, and subscribe, all that good stuff, and have a good day, good night, whatever time it is for you. Thank you for watching.